spirit of matter, and we are right now with the midheaven right on Deneb Algadi, while the moon is already in Andromeda constellation, applying to conjunct Rahu and Aries. So I might be doing something special for this Aries, although we are right now in the moon hour, but I'll wait for the moon to leave the degree of exaltation of the sun, but 18 degree according to the Constellation, which is a bit poisonous. So Mercury day, moon hour, and I want to talk about the generation of Uranus in Aquarius having their Uranus squares. So you guys have been having your Uranus square since 2018 when Uranus ingressed into Taurus. If we consider the square by sign, and there's a good reason we should be doing so. Okay, the Uranus square. So some of you might be born around the 1990s. Granted that you haven't, that it's not, oh, yeah, it's not like a closing square. It can be for the Uranuleos. That would be the closing square. You would have to be, I think, 100 centaur. quite experienced chronologically. So, Uranus square. Now we have to look at what rules the Uranus square, because Uranus Aquarius is at home and is ruled by traditional Saturn. And when Saturn was in Aquarius, before that Capricorn, Saturn was at its home sign. If you are having Uranus square perfecting right now, then this is with Saturn in Pisces. So you have to look at the houses, but I want to also take a look at the rulers, because rulers are going to give us a bit more precision as to what are you dealing with. So one thing you are dealing with is that Saturn is ruled by Jupiter, and this year Jupiter is in Taurus. This is the place of the square where Uranus in transit, it's not that it has the upper hand, okay? It's more that Venus is a benefic, okay? Venus rules Uranus in transit for you. It's that it is perfected for you to integrate the values of Venus, taking into account the values of Saturn, but with Venus kind of having the final say here. For example, when we had Saturn in Aquarius, and Saturn was squaring Uranus, okay, so Uranus was in Venus sign, Saturn was in Saturn sign. This is where we had a big problem, because both were right. Saturn Aquarius was absolutely correct, and it pointed us to the structure outside the structure. Hey, what are you going to do when you're not going to have the government by your back? Where are you going to spend the night? What are you going to eat? Okay, what are you going to rely on? Look, when all the science is censored, how are you going to get your information? Are you going to study some science? Are you going to get oriented? Okay. Venus had another thing to say. Okay, we need to change the labor market. If we want to create an alternative for working in concentration and death camps, they should be accommodating for everybody that has in every level of ability to work, and inclusive. Okay, Venus is also about connecting things, okay, it's creating a connection and values. Everybody needs to have space and land, to have housing that's supportive of the nervous system. You can't live in a commune. You need your own space. And this is also going to the soil that you grow your food, okay? So you need a good balance between the things. While Saturn, even in Aquarius, is about resilience, okay? Now, those of you that are having the Uranus square with Saturn being in Pisces, we have another conversation, okay? Because your Uranus is ruled by Saturn. We need to see where is your Saturn. Okay, you need to see where is your Saturn. For some of y'all, you even have Saturn in Taurus. So it's kind of like double Venus, okay? It's just like an internal conflict between Venusian values. And so you need to understand that in this square, Venus has the upper hand, okay? Saturn in transit is in Pisces sign. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Venus sign. Next year, it's going to be completely weird because Jupiter is going to go into Gemini. Saturn is going to be in Jupiter's sign. Jupiter is going to be ruled by Mercury. It's going to be a lot more back and forth than with the fixed sign square. There's going to be a little bit more back and forth. Okay, kind of like when Saturn was in Aquarius, but less stiff because Mercury is way more transient, okay, than Saturn. And then Jupiter. Jupiter takes 12 years around the zodiac. So you see how rulership gets you to accentuate the what's going on. And depending on where it happens for you, up until when is Jupiter getting to Gemini? Yes, April is finishing up. May, I think around June. We will be having Jupiter and ingressing to Gemini. But up until then, this square is going to be about you understanding where another stream of revolution, another stream of rebelliousness is at odds with what you bring to the table. Okay, so naturally, Uranus in Aquarius, the way you would deal with things, you would maybe you would go to astrology, maybe you would have downloads, maybe your innovation would have to do with going back to the future. Okay, looking to your ancestors in a place where people don't look to their ancestors and bringing wisdom from there, as to a field of science, as to a field of even astrology, because Saturn is our elders as well. And again, and many of you have Saturn still in Taurus. Okay, those that are going through the square now, like the exact square, have Saturn still in Taurus. Some of you perhaps a little bit of Aries and a little bit of Gemini. So you're not unfamiliar with the Venusian. And Venus is about validation, okay? Saturn is about resilience. There are different sects, okay? While Saturn and Venus are not friends, it takes dedication to have a connection. Venus is connection, Saturn is dedication. We are dealing with a square. So we are dealing with a square. It means you're arguing about something. When Saturn was in your sign by transit, it was important to remember some space is needed. Hey, not everything is community. People were molesting each other in community. Children were trafficked in community to soldiers, like to be child soldiers. Like, not everything is the community and the tribe. Okay, there is also individuality, there is also space. This is important for the nervous system. Um, and so, but Venus has a say where not everything is about science. Sometimes it's about validation. Sometimes it's not about the benefit, the doubt, and the doubt is strengthening your faith. Sometimes it's like, hey, if you're in a toxic relationship and you're still going into questioning your doubt, like I was literally in a toxic working connection when I was in academia, and that's when I realized I have to refresh my epistemic standards for empiricism, because if I keep doubting my intuitions and what my body sends me, there will be nobody there to validate me. Okay, I have to validate myself, and I have to get the F out of there. And so there is where channeling science came into being. Okay, with this channel began as channeling science, and yet it doesn't mean that my intuition or my interpretation. Okay, I can see a red flag and to think, oh, we have a shared dream. Oh, it's probably for them because I'm the one healing from traumatic experience. They are probably healthy. No, not always. So when we talk about Venus, we talk about validation, and it can be validation of your reality. And if we're talking about a conflict between substance, okay, and ideas, because Uranus is also ideology, between values and ideology, Venus is going to bring Uranus down to earth and kind of like, well, everybody living together is lovely, okay? Think about when you have a fight with a friend and you're not able to hug right now, okay? Where is the space that you need? A little bit of distance. Okay, where are you going to take your distance? If you don't have a housing, if you don't have your yard, if you can't step barefoot on the ground and balance your nervous system from all this hectic energy, especially for you guys that have Saturn in Taurus, okay, where are you going to stuff your ideals? What you going to do with them? Okay? And so and Saturn's point of view is more to, well, life doesn't promise me anything. I have to find my own way. I have to pave my own path. It's not a bad thing, but Saturn is more about resilience. Okay? Even in paving your own path, which is Aquarius, Saturn is more about resilience and is ruling your Uranus. You're going to find the innovations or the astrological teachings or the downloads or the scientific, studies that contribute to your resilience, okay? While Venus is in the team with Mars, actually. Okay, Venus is the benefic. If Saturn is the benefic, is the malefic of sect of where the benefic is Jupiter, that is the day sect, and then this means you deal, depending if you're a day or night chart. Okay, if you deal with problems, more efficient to you is to change your perspective. Change your perspective, have a philosophical teaching, and it's not about validating your reality, but actually creating the reality that you want in a certain way, where Saturn is kind of like the sufficient contraction to the expansion of Jupiter, okay, to get you with your feet on the ground. If you're in the team of Venus, then it's more about validating you, okay? It's more about validating you. You are worthy. Your point of view is as valid as anybody else, including your doctor, your psychologist, your psychiatrist, the scientist, the scientific community, the scientific discourse, astrologers. astrology as well. Okay, so Venus is all about validating the individual when she rules Uranus. It's validating your uniqueness, validating your unique beauty. Okay, it's not about being resilient to what everybody says, or shifting your perspective, or being optimistic. It's about you are deserving of, and the malefic of sect is Mars. Asserting your boundaries, taking action. So if Saturn just walks away from a situation, Venus is where too. Okay, so Venus is also about relationship. This Uranus square, okay, when your natal Uranus is ruled by Saturn and your transiting Uranus is ruled by Venus, for your year it might be more accommodating because Saturn is in Venus sign. Okay, so you understand that science also leads you to understand that with validation comes resilience. Okay, especially if in your natal chart you have, like, I don't know, you're ruled by Jupiter, you have like Pisces ascendant, but you're a night sect, and let's say your Mars and Saturn are co-present, and I think you do have that with some of the segments. Okay, some of you are going to have Mars and Saturn co-present. Then you understand it's a mixture. It's a little bit of both. If you validate yourself, you open up the understanding that you are worthy enough and you love yourself. Now you are able to change, to shift your perspective, to shift your focus, which is Jupiter. Okay? And as well, if you understand that there are many perspectives available for you, even with the terrible things that you've been through, there are many perspectives available to you. You can now turn to understand that your experience is valid and your reality is valid, and there are more ways to see this reality. So it can come from both. Those things are relevant to how you cope with the square of Uranus, because you're going to have a conflict between what I know from a lot of numbers and a lot of observation and methodically, okay, what I know about the world, what my ideology is, okay, and it is about the entire humanity, something that I know is true to everyone, okay, and the grounding of this knowledge, which is suddenly the topic of relationships, the topic of women, Venus, okay. For example, you could be one of the generation that say, one thing I know, if you are oppressed, then you must rebel by every means necessary. And then, lo and behold, people rape people when they come to liberate themselves. And now you run into those people who rebel that, those women who say, you know what, all of you, I am okay with nuking you, all of you, to throw another A-bomb so that all of you die because all of you rape women. What difference does the flag make when all of you are raping women? Okay? And now this is a square, this is a tension. Because what you know is that throwing an A-bomb on humanity is the worst thing possible that we could do. And then there are people that tell you, well, my darling, we were looking for ways to commit suicide because we didn't know if our village was slaughtered. Here I'm having a problem with work, with safety, with relationship. They're having a problem with safety, with relationship. The flag here, the flag there, are they going to change that? Okay. And so some of you, because of the presence of Saturn, have a natural inclination to understand Venus. But maybe it was more like, oh, I need to step on the soil to be resilient. Or I need human connections to be resilient. Okay? Well, now there is another issue that you haven't been expecting. So it can be, for example, relationships should be about friendship, Not about, nobody's your ATM. No, don't expect the, like, oh, what is this beaches thingy? And then comes Venus and said, well, if wherever I work, I am harassed, and wherever I try to date, I am molested. I cannot work, and I cannot date. So at least pay me. Okay, and they are running into this Uranus in transit. Okay, so it is connected with money. It's connected with relationships. Connected with appearance. Okay. And you must understand that this is a conflict. This is a conflict. And it's not exactly a conflict between connection and separatedness. It can be, because Uranus in Venus sign still adds the need to have space. Okay? Some unusual form of more detachment than we were used to, or seeing connection in places where we weren't seeing connection. It usually requires some sort of space. And individual thinking, unique ways to solve problems. Okay, it's also unpredictable. And yes, Uranus square, when Uranus is squaring from a relational sign, it can mean shock and trauma regarding relationships, issues to do with women. And again, it's not like always the case that like the woman is the victim. It can be shocking behavior from women as well. Okay, so some women have shocking behaviors, some women have shocking ideologies, unusual ideologies. Some women are shocking in the fact that they're like, oh, you have a penis. Yes, you're a woman. Yes. And the traditional, the more traditional view is kind of like, okay, but I wasn't expecting this. Okay, we're in 2024. Okay, so there is a lot of shock to do with Uranus, and the square is something that can be shocking that you're dealing with in your life. Okay, they can be because of right now they can be connection to religion, to philosophy, because Saturn is in Pisces and Jupiter in Taurus. So it can be, many things. Suddenly to be gay became way more dangerous than it was. While just after they acknowledged like gay marriage in several places, suddenly to be of a certain religion or a certain ethnicity became even worse than it was. And it's not just to one ethnicity. It's like everyone. So how do these things meet? For the square, again, the core issue here is resilience won't get you through it all. You soon have to change some things. And you are in an age and a time where you are a part of a change. Okay? If I take a look back, now I'm about to be 40. So if I take a look at my Uranus square, I have natal Uranus in Sag and 12 degrees Sag. So the square position would be from around 12 degrees Pisces. And if I take a look at that time, it was a time where my boundaries were violated, unfortunately. However, at the same time, a lot of the way that I have been doing work had to change because it's 10th house. My worldview as well had to change. I became a lot more aware of my bodily constraints with work and how this affected and was affected by intimate connections. There was an issue of sexual boundary violation. Yes, absolutely. There was also an issue of not having support because there was nothing. There was nothing. And there was also issue about astral dimensions. Uranus to the first, the Pisces, my first house, so it's bringing more astral awareness. Okay, there's like if your physical body is not the only body that's around. It's our energy body, emotional body. Definitely awareness to psychology, but this was because also Pluto was conjunct in my midheaven at the time. So it is definitely a time where shocking events will be, and sometimes they might take quite some time to process. Okay. Again, I'm not saying like, God forbid, sexual boundary violation or toxic relationship or something like this, but definitely you're going to be exposed to what is needed to change and where are you in your 20s a part of this change. Right now, it's going to happen through a conflict. It's not going to be lovey-dovey, okay? What I can tell you more is I want you to refer. At that time, I was reading L'Ombre Belle by Albert Camus, and I think it is very relevant for Uranus squares. Okay? The awareness that the need to have a revolution in itself does not necessarily tell us what to do and how to do it and what needs to be. The awareness that what is now is absolutely not okay is not in itself telling us what is okay. But there is a shocking event. Everything you knew about the world is in turmoil, and you don't know, you understand that there has to be innovation in the way that you address it, but you don't quite know what this innovation is just yet. Okay, if I go back to around 2007, 2008, before the Pluto ingress even, then I definitely understood that yes, there's a problem with sexual boundary violation. It took me some time to even understand that, because I was like, I was attracted to this person before. Why in the actual thing I feel all these weird things and traumas and this? Is it from this? Is it from there? And I was like, oh, I was telling them my no and my boundaries, and they violated that. I'm not ascribing intention to that violation. Okay, it's just saying like what happened. And I also understood that neither me nor them, because they were talking with me on relationships all the time, have a model for healthy relationships. And then as I was looking to the psychology, I also began to understand that, equity at the workplace and labor conditions and all the things that I was running away from because I didn't know how to deal, like another labor revolution when Pluto in Capricorn, come on. But I was running away from into psychiatric tagging that I accepted upon myself because I really didn't know what to do. And I felt like I'm trying different jobs. Why doesn't it work for me? And I see people around me are working, not making enough money. And I'm like asking them, like, is happening? There was some revolution, but some protests, but that was weird. So you see how the intimate part and the work part and I began to understand the connection that is way more holistic, and then the intergenerational connection. So there is a lot of facets to change. There are a lot of facets to change, and I believe it would be around my Uranus. I think my Uranus sextile, perhaps, or already my Uranus square, that it will begin before the square happens. The notion I was writing, screenwriting, and the trying to understand how change happens was a question that I was dealing with, because one of the most inspiring people that taught me about screenwriting was saying that a classical plot is, all these plots are stories of going from slavery to liberation, to freedom. And I needed to understand what is freedom for me, what is change in life, basically, so that I can write a screenplay, classical screenplay. So yes, I have Uranus in the 10th house. It's a bit more prominent of a placement. So it might not be as accentuated for you, but it is very likely to be, because we are in interesting times and we are in revolutionary times. So your Uranus square is meeting up with this revolution. And if for me, it was more about like my physical self, and my career or relation with parents, or public reputation or status or whatnot. They didn't mind about this too much. But then if you have like no resources, because you're exposing things, then it begins to be a problem. But for you, it is coming more from the if mine were both Jupiter ruled, okay, so it's a clash of worldviews between me, what I believe about myself, and what I believe about career, or what I should be, or stuff like that. And for you, it is a clash between the resilience that you need to have when developing your own path, and the all humanity level facets of your beliefs, or your views, or ideology, or science. Okay, because the one size fit allness, and the need to validate your reality and change the reality, change the fiscal system, change the land, change the relationship, the what do we see as a woman, the relation to women. And Venus Taurus is about sensuality. Okay, it's not that women will suddenly become Martian, maybe for a transit, yes. And not if they have it naturally, yes, but it's not about Aries. In Aries is the sister of Mars, is the sister of Ares. So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna carry a gun, and I'm gonna press the red button, I'm gonna throw an A-bomb, and I'm gonna do what I have to do. Venus is more about, we really need to change the culture. We really need to change how we relate. We really need to change our, fiscal autonomy. Okay, if Aries is identity, and autonomy is identity, Taurus is the fiscal autonomy. And it's a very territorial sign, but there is reason to that. Okay, and you're gonna find out. For example, as I was going from the city to the village where I live, and I was looking at the green fields of where all the Bedouin villages grow their agriculture, and I was thinking about like the olive trees of the Palestinian people. And also the olive trees of Israelis that later grew, and it's kind of like the harsh story, like the poor trees. Um, then I was thinking about, when people, where people live in the city and they don't even have a field or don't even grow agriculture, they don't understand when somebody is talking, a person who lives in a city, they don't understand when somebody is talking about a piece of land. Why do you fight so much for this piece of land? Come on, let's all live together. Where is the problem? You might be asking yourself the same question. Why do people fight over a piece of land so much, and they murder and they rape and they torture and they this and they that? And then when you think about this piece of land as having a connection, as stabilizing your nervous system, having a relation, then you understand, first of all, even more so why you're not supposed to rape people for this piece of land, because this is Venus, okay? You want to treat Venus well when you want land. But also you understand that this is the survival of people. This is the healthy nervous system of people. This allows for healthy relationships. So they want to make sure that they have enough land so that they can make good decisions and that they can withdraw to their own place where they have a place in the world and they're connected with the trees and they have the food, they have the autonomy, and then they can be amiable. And they is each and every one of us. Okay, but if you were living in the city, you never had this experience. So you used to go into the psychiatrist when you're unbalanced. And you're kind of like, I try all these cocktails and I feel like a junkie and I don't necessarily feel better. And it feels like I'm engineering something more because it's the city, more so than, allowing myself to feel my emotions. When people talk about, if my psychologist was talking about, that might be useful to you. My psychologist was talking about, not they don't know it's energy, to those who watch me regularly. If my psychologist is saying, maybe you need to allow yourself to feel, okay? And they have a yard with fruit trees that they usually sit there on the ground, maybe even, or walk on the ground or next to the tree, and they're sitting with the back against the tree and not necessarily hugging the tree or anything like this, and they're allowing themselves to feel their feelings. Of course it works for them. I grew up to think that I cannot feel my feelings and there's something peculiar with my feelings, that I cannot feel them to the depth because I didn't have the balance to the nervous system where something grows and I'm next to it and then I can feel my feelings. Okay, so and the thing is, it's not only that I didn't have, because probably there were trees around that I could go to, that I could look at, but I didn't understand the meaning. They were just nice trees. Okay, I didn't understand the meaning. I didn't understand the connection. I didn't have this. Okay, so a person that doesn't have land doesn't understand why you're fighting over a piece of land. Your trees were burned. Do you know how many times we moved from one flat to another flat because they raised the rent, and we move around and move around. You tell these people that you want a piece of land. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know what you're talking about. They never had this. Okay? So it's very difficult to have a relation where people did not have the material wealth to do with that. Okay, and you could have a lovely yard and a lovely piece of land, but this piece of land is covered with just grass, no trees, and usually it's either too cold or too hot, and it's just for the dog to play. Okay, it's another experience. Now you know how to connect with dogs, whereas some Orthodox person would say, I'm scared of dogs, dogs are evil, it says in the Bible. It says nothing in the Bible. It's a companion. You're gonna feel better if you raise them right. Okay, you have to also be responsible. So for you, it's a conflict, and you usually are not so aware of the position you're coming from, and it's natural for you. It's like, why do all these people think they're entitled to so and so and so and so, when you're forgetting that you are stepping your feet on the ground, that you have a yard, that you have a this, that you have all these things that balance your nervous system. And then you're telling people to feel their feelings and set their feet in the soil, where the soil that they live in, nothing grows necessarily. Or they buy this mattress thingy, which is nice, okay? It's not the full effect of like walking in the forest or something like this. So Taurus reminds you that even when you want to make Venus fertile, you still need the elements that you have on Earth, which is water and earth, in addition to air and fire, okay? There are so many ways this can express itself. It's a shocking argument, and there can be shocking reactions. Whatever is that Uranus thing, and it's an intergenerational thing. So the people who have placements in Taurus, this could be you, or other people in your life, are going through revolutionary times themselves. And their eureka is not your eureka. Okay? Uranus is about eureka. Their eureka is not your eureka. Your eureka, your Uranus, I'm gonna, set my feet on the ground, I'm gonna tap to my ancestors, or I'm going to do some math, or I'm going to learn something. Their eureka is like completely different. And there is merit to what they say, there is merit to what you say. When Jupiter is in Venus sign, Venus has the upper hand. You need to get yourself informed by Venus. You also have things to say that are important, but it's mainly Venus rules. Okay, you need to get yourself informed. It's also it's the square. Okay, you're just in your 20s, so you need to get yourself informed. Because there's a new, when you were born, there was some revolution. Now there's another type of revolution. Okay? And when it is, when Jupiter goes to Gemini, now this is a different type of conversation. And it's not about your age, because if when Venus rules, okay, the ruler of the transit has the upper hand, then it's when they are right. But when it is Gemini ruled, then now the ruler of Uranus, okay, is Mercury. Okay, and so we don't have, just like when Saturn was in Aquarius, again, we don't have connection between the rulers. Okay, so we're not going to have a planet like Jupiter that's going to spend the whole year in Venus sign, giving her the kind of like the power in this situation. But it's not about the power. It's just more like, okay, now it's time to integrate that Venus thing. Now, as of around June 2024, your square is going to change a bit of phase. And this is where you're going to have more to say. And it's not just because you've been through the square, so now you have something to say. No, not necessarily. Okay, so it's not necessarily. But simply because Jupiter and Mercury, Jupiter is going to be in Mercury's sign, and Mercury is going to switch up. So sometimes that Mercury, okay, that's going to be ruling your Saturn will have something to say, and sometimes Venus. They will have conversations. It's more of an equal back and forth. Okay, because Saturn will be in Pisces for a while now. And will get out of Pisces at about the time you finish your Uranus square. But Venus is moving around and Mercury is moving around even faster. And so as of June, you're going to feel like you have more say in things. You have more say in things, and if you will be the square will be perfecting for you at around that time, then it's going to feel a bit lighter. Um, Again, it can be a major conflict, but both of you are going to have a more of a back and forth rather than nothing that you say, all of your big ideologies when it comes to the ground level. Okay, you can pray 5, 7, 50 times a day and kiss the soil. If you mistreat a woman, of course your crops are not going to grow well because it's the same element. It's the same element. Okay. And if you are yeah, that type of stuff. But when it comes to let's say Mercury, okay, so Mercury is technology, and so it's like permaculture. Where does permaculture meets technology? Okay. Where and there and it's both are air signs. So you have something to talk about. Okay, there's something to mitigate, to bridge this. Now you have an earth and air, and you have to intellectually understand the earth, where the earth is expecting you to be with her, which is the one thing you can do. Okay, but she is right. Because when you go to space, say you go to Mars, you go to Venus, you have soil there. You even if you grow something in air or in water, you need the element soil, okay? Because what are we going to have without this is that a certain type of stability will no longer be evident. We'll have to find it within the air. So we can have stagnation to the air, we can have stagnation to the water, okay, and there can be pollution, okay, because the soil is like a filter, and that would express itself as no filters, but also nothing to be able to keep growing. Okay, so you might grow a little bit of crops, but to grow humanity, for example, might be more difficult. When we go to Gemini, it's more about, so how do we engineer this? So when it comes to apply Gemini, this to society, how do we apply this to society? How do we communicate this thing? And now you have a little bit of back and forth. Okay, some people say Mercury is even exalted in Aquarius. So there is more to talk about. Expect this to be a time that is pivotal in your life, so much so that it might take until your Uranus opposition to understand your Uranus square. I'm not joking. Okay, only now I'm about to be 40, and when Uranus ingresses into Gemini, then I will begin, okay, my by sign Uranus opposition. Only now I'm beginning to understand the features of my Uranus square a little bit more. It's the tip of the iceberg, okay? But things receive a certain perspective. Of course, for me, it involves the 4th and the 10th house, so it's way more intimate, way more personal, and way more public as well. But depends on the houses. But we look at the times that we are living in and look at your agency within these times, and it's a zen-like tension to hold between growing resilient, the resilience that you need to last long, okay, and for your alternative reality to be lasting, alternative to Capricorn, okay, alternative to the structure. and um, the warmth and connection and the soil health that is necessary to the nervous system health, um, that is needed. That is perhaps slower than air. So and for any Uranus, L'Enrebelle by Albert Camus, I think, is a timeless book to read. Okay, and a lot of it discusses on the dissonance between being young and having the energy to rebel versus being older and wiser and knowing what needs to change and how we can change it, but not necessarily having the energy to rebel. This is why connections with people who are older to you and have a Uranus trine to your Uranus, Uranus sextile to your Uranus, are very important because they can assist you to facilitate the social change movement or the scientific revolution. Okay, they have more experience, but they no longer have the energy. You are a youngster. It's difficult for you to listen, but listen to them, learn from the, when you learn, I'm not a pilot, but when you learn to fly a plane, there is a joke going around, people who learn how to fly a plane, and they say, you will not live to learn from all of your mistakes by yourself. So listen to the people, because learn from other people's mistakes. Make your own mistakes, yes, but it's no good to make the same mistake over and over again. Eventually, you want to progress somewhere. And so, learning about scientific revolutions, reading books like L'Enrebelle, learning about revolutions in general. Okay, when I was even Me Too veteran, this was in academia, and the person that was violating my boundaries, they had Uranus actually, I think, still trining my own Uranus, or I think they actually talked to me about the person that had this Uranus trine to my Uranus, and a part of the things that they were teaching was also about the revolutions and social change and political change and that stuff that people look into when they look into the history of politics. And many things that were said there both opened my mind to think this is an intergenerational thing, okay? But also to understand I have a certain point of intervention here. Okay, it's not power over another person, it's more intervention here. I'm not completely helpless. Okay, it took some time to grow out of this chronic helplessness situation that I felt about my boundaries being violated and the utmost frustration. But learning certain things like it's probably not good for them to get rid of me, because then I'm like, somebody that people, I will be more symbol of the resistance and a mythical symbol when I write a satire and all the students are looking at this, then when you're just a person, another person, and so on and so forth. So when you're an agent of a revolution, there are points of intervention that you need to learn about. But I also knew that I don't, one of the great things that he taught us was about Mandela, not what I said about astrology, about Sirius, but definitely of the notion that to look at a revolution from a perspective of being forgiven towards the older generations. Okay, I think this is one of he created himself great karma in this, because with all the terrible things that happened, I said, this person is older than me, okay, and this person could be my father. And the thing is that I have to, while I act for my change, to also be compassionate to the older generation, just the way Mandela was compassionate when he was abolishing apartheid. Okay, it took time. So you want to have this interaction. It's going to come to your life, whether it's a personal revolution. Uranus is a generational planet, okay? It's something that you are going through. Other people are also going through. And with Uranus, it takes time, okay? It takes a couple of decades. It does, it just does. Okay, the way, if I was looking at my Uranus square, I think a decade after, yes, a decade, almost a decade after, then I would think about this in the red flags, toxic relation, borderlines meets narcissist, and that was the framework of reference that I had. Okay, after the Me Too, it was more like, okay, I'm probably not a borderline. I just suffered certain trauma. And it's not just about my relational pattern, there are also changes to society. So they're probably not a narcissist either. Okay. And this is my frame of reference. You might have a completely different frame of reference. But it was a decade after, like 2007, where I was reviewing things from, suddenly people were talking about like gaslighting, and Pluto was in Capricorn and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I experienced something like that. I don't know if they intended this or not, but in effect, this is what I experienced. And now I have wording to say that. And then about almost a decade later, then now astrologer, and people talk about like astral sex and astral boundaries and this and that, and I'm like, wait. And it's not just this one psychologist that talks about these things and does these things, but in entire communities where you can talk about what he can give wording to stuff that in the past you would be offered a beta blocker. In the past you would be offered. Now people are coerced, and they are coerced politically. But beta blockers, which is funny enough, is not only given to people with like cuckoo, okay, which basically means you survived violence, you're not cuckoo, but also to people who are after chemotherapy, and also to people with heart conditions. And the person who was violating my boundaries, and the fear was like, it's kind of like they're going to try. I think everybody was afraid that the other person is going to try to make them crazy. That it's not good for either of us, because if I would be forced to take these beta blockers, this person had problems with their heart, and they will probably be given beta blockers too. So I was the one that got that beta blockers is not good, because it basically interferes with the activity of the autonomic muscles, and you, like, nobody's gonna know you're dead. So, and no, it's not a pleasant death. I can tell from experience. If you wish that sort, then I wish you more dignified death. So, so this is just how giant the Uranus Square is. Okay, it is just how much time it takes to look at it from another perspective, from another perspective, from another perspective. And it doesn't have to be something as terrible as like boundary violation or sexual boundary violation. It could be an economic crisis. Sorry, Taurus things. It could be around you feeling insecure about your beauty. Okay, somebody tells you something, and the Uranus Square is where you begin to understand like stuff that you have been considering, whether it's about your beauty or beauty standards, or maybe you're dealing with beauty. It's like, oh, you're beautiful from the inside, it's okay. And then you're like, fuck it, I'm beautiful also from the outside. Get the fuck out of here if you don't agree. Okay. And that can be a Venus, Aquarius, absolutely. Because Aquarius is an air sign. It's like, are you a good friend? Are you a kind person? Are you nice to hang around? Are you giving me enough space? Okay. And Taurus is like, the heck, I want you to think I'm beautiful. I want you to like my beauty. I want you to like my appearance. Stuff that maybe you didn't think about before. So it can just be on that level, but it's going to take a couple of like decades to kind of process how many things were touched by this Uranus. Okay, so what can help you is the generations that whose Uranus is trining or sextiling yours, because it's a harmonious aspect. So for you, the Urano Aries, okay, Urano Aries was at about 2000, I think 14, 15 until like 2000, not 14, 15. Oh wait, 7 years back from 2018 was 2011. Okay, so whether it's people that were born at the time or events that happened at the time, look to events that because at that time we had the Arab Spring, we had a lot of revolutions about housing, okay, people calling for housing, for cost of living. Yes, what wars were there? Probably there were wars. A lot of innovation. There was a Uranus conjunction with Aries that none of the people who were around me in the academia will ever forget. And, they literally changed from innovation to excellency after I wrote my satire. But it was not in the satire even, it was just like, it's just stuff I wrote. And you think from a person who feels like completely like Charlie Chaplin in the Modern Time sketch, kind of like melding within the machine that is the spirit of the times, and suddenly they changed the way they advertised the university because of something you wrote. You're like, oh shit, oh my God, I make a difference. It's not the desired effect, but I engineered something. Let's work with it. So that was another story. But this, of course, involves Pluto. For Uranus, it's more like a liberation. And I want you to think about that era because we already talked about housing. Okay, we already talked about housing. We already talked about cost of living. We already talked about digitation of the coin, okay, Bitcoin and stuff like that, digital coins. We already talked about LGBTQ. We already talked about that, okay? What was happening with the Urano Aries? What was happening with the Urano Aries? This is going to give you a little bit of support, but the Urano Aries is not enough. You want the trine, okay? So Urano Cancers, not Urano Cancers, sorry, for you, Urano Geminis. I need to look at Urano Geminis because it's getting to my fourth house. So that would be like almost 80 years, no, more than 80 years ago. 80 something years ago, okay? You want to think about scientists, about people who maybe planned cities, about like what was there, because those people have something in common with you. When Uranus is going to ingress into Gemini, you're basically embarking at your Uranus trine, okay? For example, I was going to the supermarket and we got to talk about something and we got to talk about housing. Because whenever somebody tries to bring up like the conflict and the war, I'm like, hey, it's 2030. It's like, we're Maui. And the person I was talking to he was a father of 6. And he said, for me, I like the city. We live in a village, okay? I like the city. We're an hour from the city, but this is the city for him. So I like the city. I need the city. I don't care. But for people that are living in the country, they can't, okay, like that they have their own field. They can't. This is like, he was agreeing with me on that level, but suddenly I got to speak with a person who didn't quite get what the problem with 15-minute city, and that your housing is all surveilled, and that you need a kind of like a digital credit card to get into your apartment or to buy at the store. Okay, they never had, either they're not aware that this can happen, or they have the community, they never had an issue with that. they never survived like violence and had to go out, or all of these things. And then it was like, oh my God, there is this person who is absolutely not seeing it is problematic, but he can see how for others it can be problematic. Okay, so for you, those trines, this other Uranus air sign, even if it was, you can listen to lectures of this person. One of the figures that accompanied me was Richard Feynman. I don't know where was his Uranus, but he was like going with me and give me a lot of insights. So that can be very useful for you. The Uranus Sag. Oh, I'm okay. I have Sun in Taurus and Venus in Taurus. So I'm one of the people. I'm one of the validation people. So I'm a bit of a problematic, but my Uranus is in Sag. Okay, in the 10th house for me. So I give you like this teaching. And so the Uranus Sag people are a bit older than you, so they don't have quite the energy. Some of them maybe, yes, but they are like, I'm about to be 40. I feel this. Am I not still a little? Oh my God, I am a little. Absolutely. I'm heading to my 5th house perfected year. Just today, as I was thinking about what happened 12 years ago, and 12 years ago, it's 13 years ago, and I was just thinking about these things. I just went and like wasted the last money that I set for the budget for this week. Not wasted, but I just had to buy like some sweet fruits and some like stuff like that, because I needed like my emotional eating and a little bit healthier. So yes, absolutely, yes, but I'm also 40. I don't have the energy of climbing a mountain or running around or something like this. There are good things to this. I can rest a little bit more, but I can think maybe a little bit more. I still have Mercury in Aries. I usually think a lot after I act, but the thing is that I do have a bit of length of life where my experience is not discouraging to you. Okay? My experience with rebelliousness, I would still tell you, rebel. You came here to change something. You're going through this as a conflict now. You might not have all the things that you are, but think about engineering, okay? We make mistakes, yes, but we go on and we learn more things, and do not be discouraged. And keep the fire in your heart still, yes, because even though it is like terrible thing that can happen, and unfortunately, yes, that terrible things can happen. Eventually, we proceed life because there is more to explore, and we are a part of the people that came to change something. Okay, Uranus is our revolutionary duty, and yes, and not only that, my Jupiter is in Saturn sign, although Capricorn. So people of my generation can very well help you to mitigate this time in your life. It's not to mitigate this time in your life. It's more like to mitigate the judgment you may have about yourself during this time in your life. Okay, because some of the things that you are going to find out is like, oh heck, for example, I did not know that I have like an inner stigma, that like unhealthy relationships cannot happen to me because I know things about relationships and like this and like that, and and then I found myself in an unhealthy, toxic dynamic, completely devastated. And in retrospective, I'm like, what was I thinking? But then the trying to go out of it was like trying to find a point of interference. Where can I improve upon myself? Where can I this? Some of it is improving upon myself, but the society also has to change. Okay? Some of it is cultural changes, is social changes, is political changes, is financial changes. And this a little bit goes back to the places in me where I didn't have this financial stability. And so when you go around with, 3 cards out of 100, then you get 3 out of 100. And the 100 is like the things that you're dealing with around those things, okay? Hopefully there are better ways to see that. But you are now exposed to something shocking that you think like, oh, how did I not see that? Oh my gosh, this is so obvious. Why wasn't I, and you are right. It is true. But also, you are also young and you are also here to change those things. And, what can I say for my aspect? Like, if I'm around my 40s and I invested a lot in growing myself, in learning, in changing, and I'm fairly intellectual, and I'm fairly tending to my like emotional disability and so on, then it shouldn't be that inaccessible. And surely the other person is not more terrible or more pure than me, okay? I'm not better than anybody and I'm not lesser than anybody. Maybe the circumstances of our life are so. So probably there's some structural changes do need to occur for us to be thinking more clearly and making better choices in our life, for that to be more accessible. Okay, to say that I know exactly the what and how. I can have a clue even now in 40. So now you're going to the point where it's collapsing. It's collapsing right now. But something is also being liberated at the same time. Do not feel shamed if the collapsing and the liberation coexist, okay? And this is where it makes sense structurally, but it doesn't make sense relationally, because it's both understanding if something happens like violation of your boundaries or something like this, or you violated somebody else's boundaries, okay? Then it's both understanding that yes, there is some crisis through which there is some liberation, okay? To use a particular analogy and trigger on like everything, and you know me with triggers, you can't count on me to always remember the triggers. So the thing is that, let's say if a person, God forbid, went through rape, then yes, they can be wet. Yes, they can experience orgasm. It's a way of the body to deal with the stress, and to like lubricate so that you kind of like soften the effect. It doesn't mean that they had willingly consensual sex, and it does mean that they are dealing with the implications of having sexual boundary violation situation that they are in. And nope, that's not willingly consensual sex, that's not sex, that's not intimacy, that's not liberation either. The fact that the body responded in a way for the crisis does not make it, the thing. It's not sex. It's not the big O. It's not the big O. It's not the way sex is going to feel when it's willingly consensual. And it might be a point of manifesting for that. So this is important. Okay, and we might not even know exactly why with this person this was okay, with that person was not okay, with this person this situation was okay, with that person that situation was not okay. Okay, but it's important that we're going to be enjoying it before, during, and after. And it's not always about you have to change your perspective or to change your story or to change your this. Sometimes, but sometimes it's no. Okay, and to go into sexuality willingly, consensually, and proceeding like this is important for our nervous system, for our hormonal system, for the benefit of our relation. And to violate or to interfere in that is how should I say it? If you want space, don't violate the boundaries of someone, right? You understand this. This is, yes, if you want to set a boundary, don't violate the boundary of someone. Yeah, that is, should be like clear. So if somebody is attached to you, don't treat them ugly to this, to that, because it would only trigger their abandonment things further. And this is also important to understand, especially for the air signs, because I think they don't quite have the access to the water unless you have it in your chart, that you don't quite understand. It's very difficult to understand intellectually, but it's our different elements. So you think about it as you're pressing the wrong button to get the result that you want. Validation is needed, and asserting your boundaries is more effective if it is accessible to you than to violate the boundaries of another, because they won't get they won't get anything from that. It's usually you're dealing with a person that it doesn't have housing or doesn't have something, or doesn't have validation. They can be very rich but not have validation, or they have like past trauma. So one of you is going to have to be the person that's kind of like making the initiation to break the cycle of violence, if that is the case, and paving path for like the new. So think about it, you're an air sign, so astral field or stuff like that can be relevant, and sensuality and beauty and finances and artistic expression can also be relevant. So yes, where ideology meets connection. Hope this was helpful.